All right, folks, welcome in. Welcome back. This is another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast, and I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. You can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. You can find us on Facebook as well. Just search 901 Soccer and search Bluff City Media. We should pop right up both times. And, of course, you're watching this on YouTube, I hope. So please make sure to like the video, please comment on the video, and please subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. A lot of exciting stuff going on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. Would be remiss if I did not point out the new college football show that Bluff City Media has. That came out the first one this past weekend, as it was the first real week of college football. There's still, I guess, a lot of debate on whether, we count week 0 or not, but the fact that they can't call it week 1, they call it week 0, means that it probably shouldn't be the real week 1, so we're going to stick with week 1. But much as I love college football, that's not what we're here to discuss today. What we are here to discuss today is Memphis Tigers soccer. If you'll recall, last week I mentioned that probably wasn't going to be doing a preview or a weekly recap show this week because Wednesday is my free night, and the men's team is at home on Wednesday night. But it dawned on me, hey, Monday is Labor Day. I don't have to go to work, to my regular job. So here we are, recording this on Labor Day. What we have for you today is you have both Memphis Tigers soccer teams having a very good last week and having a very exciting home slate for this week. You've got the men's team got their first win at home on Thursday night in the first game of the second straight doubleheader. Then you had the women's team play Missouri in the second game of the second straight doubleheader, and the men's team was victorious, as was the women's team. And that was a pair of very entertaining games. We'll talk more about that as we go into each team. And then, of course, you have there's just no other way to put it. You've got the women's soccer teams hosting the game of the century this week. And that's what I'm doing my best to hype it up as the game of the century. And I hope everybody else is as well. It's 5-0-0 perfect record Memphis against 5-0-0 perfect record Tennessee at South Campus on Thursday. That's going to be a pair of top 15 teams. We'll talk a little bit more about maybe why Memphis women's aren't a little bit higher, which is disappointing, but not really anything they can do about that. Then no one has control over the weather, unfortunately. But it's going to be, with the exception of the 2 NCAA tournament games against LSU in 2021 and 2023, I don't think there have ever been bigger home games in Memphis women's soccer history. Certainly not since they've been back at South Campus, which I believe was the 2019 season. Maybe before my time out there when they played in the stadium at Mike Rose. But as long as I've been covering this team, they did go to a back-to-back Sweet 16s, but those were not on campus. Those were both in Fayetteville. And, we'll talk more about it when we get down there. Let's not spoil the whole show in the first 5 minutes. All right. So before we get to the women's team, we're going to talk about the men's team because they've been very good the last couple of years as well, and they deserve a little bit of a showcase. So if you'll recall, the men's team got off to a little bit of a rough start, as they did last year. They had a 1-1 draw on the road against Lipscomb, which by itself was not a terrible result because Lipscomb's a team that has fairly comprehensively beaten you the last couple of times you've played them. They got a good program up there. And so a 1-1 draw on the road at Lipscomb is nothing for the men's team at the University of Memphis to turn their nose up at. And then you get a home game against Belmont, a team that you've played 20 times and only lost 2 once, and you lost. And that's not a game that you're supposed to lose. Really, the first half was dreadful. The second half was much, much better. But unfortunately, the chances that they got in the second half, they didn't put away. So there were 1 or 2 people that were ready to do their best Chicken Little impression and declare that the sky was falling. I was not there yet. And if you'll go back to last week's show, I said, guys, let's tap the brakes. I understand it's not an ideal start to the season, Would I have preferred 2 wins out of 2 games? Yes, I would. Would I have preferred 1-1 and not to lose to a team that you really don't ever lose to? Yes, I would have preferred that. I am also sure that the players and Coach Mulrooney would have preferred that as well. But I said, guys, these next 4 games, if we get through these next 4 games and things don't look better, then it's time to panic. Well, we've gotten through 2 of the 4 games, and they got a 2-0 home win against Mercer, and they were the better team from start to finish. And then they went on the road to Evansville, who beat them here last year, who was an NCAA tournament team last year, and they got a draw on the road. So, calmate, tranquilo. All right, it's okay. I told you guys not to panic. I didn't panic, and the team didn't panic, and we're back here, and they got back-to-back results. Now, the game against Mercer, better from start to finish, which was impressive because Mercer is a team that beat them last year. And, we've talked ad nauseum about how bad the start was to last season. And, after that game against Belmont, like I said, you couldn't help but look back and go, man, this was really, really very similar to how a lot of last year went. But to me, right now, it looks like they have not waited until conference play to flip the proverbial switch. They took care of business at home against Mercer, and then they went on the road to Evansville and got a draw. Now, the game against Mercer was funny because there was one funny. It was funny to me, and funny to the folks from the Daily Helmsman, the student paper at the University of Memphis. Which shout out to the folks over at the Daily Helmsman. There's been a lot of local media coverage of both of these teams this year, more so for the women because that's how it's been, and that's fine. You're not going to hear me be upset about people covering soccer in this town, and not everybody can do what I can do. Haha. But all kidding aside, the Daily Helmsman has been there for every game, much the same way that I have for Bluff City Media / Beyond the 90. So they've I've been very impressed with the commitment from them to covering these soccer programs at the U of M. The Daily Memphian has had somebody there for, I think, I know John Varlos and Parthu Padjahai have both made appearances there. Jonah Dillon from the Commercial Appeal has made an appearance there. So these soccer programs are getting the coverage, and I think it's been reflected in the crowds. Now, this past Thursday's crowds were probably the 2 weakest so far. The weakest for the men, and for sure the weakest for the women. A couple of variables there. It's not anything to be mad about. 5:00 start time on a Thursday is obviously going to preclude a lot of people from being able to be there. Also, there was a lot of rain in the forecast. That's something Coach Mulrooney talked about in the postgame, is how lucky they were that the rain held off. Because you think about it, the men's team last year had at least 2 games that were postponed and rescheduled because of rain. The women's team lost a game entirely, not as in they came out on the losing side of the game. The game just didn't get played against UT Martin. And, a win against UT Martin isn't really probably going to be a whole hell of a lot to get you into the NCAA tournament, but it couldn't hurt. That's just another W in the win column. So I'm going to agree with Coach Mulrooney that they were very lucky that the rain held off on Thursday. But I think even though it held off, I think the forecast scared a lot of people off, which is disappointing. But it's not the end of the world. They'll be back. I'm not worried about that. They'll be back. And so the funniest thing about the Mercer game, yes, kind of more of a sparse crowd, but Eben McIntyre got a goal. It was a very nice goal. Had the Mercer defenders on skates. Had them chasing shadows, just falling all over themselves, twisted and turned, and they put one into the bottom corner. I think it might have taken a deflection on the way through. But hey, they all count the same. So who cares how it got in there? Just that it got in there. So you're up 1-0 going into the half. And then in the second half, Mercer decided that the only reason they were losing is because of the refereeing. And you guys know where I'm going with this. As somebody who's been doing something for it'll be 19 years in about a month and a half. I've got the experience. I know what I'm looking for. I know when players and coaches have legitimate gripes and when they're just showing their ass. And the Mercer coaches and players showed their ass on Thursday. They wanted a foul. They didn't get it. And Memphis is under no obligation to wait for the whistle or to wait for the Mercer defenders to get back. So they just took the ball and off they went and running. And all the while, Mercer players are yelling at the AR, they're yelling at the referee, the coach is going bananas, and nobody's really concerned with playing soccer. They just want to be mad at the referee because the only reason teams ever lose games is because of the referees. Am I right? Without referees, nobody would ever lose a game ever again. And Memphis says, thank you very much. Bing, bang, boom, goal, 2-0 ball game. It was a very nice goal. I mean, that's the type of goal where if it reminded me just a little bit, not so much the actual mechanics of it, but the ruthless counterattacking nature of it. It reminded me of Landon Donovan's goal against Brazil to make it 2-0 in the Confederations Cup final in 2009. And where I believe whoever was commentating for the World Feed said, if Brazil had scored this type of goal, we've been waxing poetical about it. And like that was like if Brazil had scored the goal that Memphis scored to make it 2-0 against Mercer, that would have been every soccer commentator around the world. It would have been all over your social media feed. It would have been everywhere. Because it was ruthless and it was devastating. They were not interested in waiting for Mercer to get back, nor should they have been. So props to them for that. There was blood in the water. They took their chance. They buried it. 2-0, courtesy of Saad Chouki. 2-0. The funniest part about it was Mercer's coach, as I'm telling you as a referee, they're mad about the foul down here, and then they score, and you're like, oh boy, I'm going to hear it now. Regardless of whether it was a foul or not. I don't know if it was a foul or not. I had a lot of bodies in the way. From where I'm at my little table over here, I got the assistant referee, and I got 15 players right in front of me. So I have no idea if it was a foul or not. But as somebody who's watched the game basically since I was in first grade, maybe, and I'm 31 years old now, at some point, you need to shut the hell up and get back and try to prevent the other team from scoring. Mercer did not do that. So referee goes over and coach is going bananas. Why the fourth official was not involved in this at all and telling the coach, trying to talk the coach off the ledge, I don't know. Referee goes over, deals with it, gives him the yellow card. So we're all laughing, ha, what an idiot. And then I look, and then all of a sudden I hear a red card has been shown to the Mercer coach. And I see him walking, and some dad in the crowd said, yeah, you better go to the bus. Which was just like, yeah, that's where why are you yelling at him? That's where he's going. He's going to the bus because that's where he's supposed to go. He did not pull a Javier Mascherano. He did not pull a Ted Valentine. He did not try to sneak back in and give instructions on the phone or have a fake mustache and glasses. I think he did go straight to the bus. I know at the youth level, when you dismiss a coach, they have to be out of sight and out of sound, meaning I don't care if you're all the way over there. If I can still hear you, we're not restarting. And you're losing, so you need to get over there and get out of sight and sound as fast as you can. I'll at least give Mercer's coach credit. Once he was gone, he was gone. He didn't try to prove how big his penis was. He didn't, get into a pissing contest or do the I'm leaving, but I'm going as slow as I can. Like he did, he was gone and he went. So props to him, I guess. Maybe once you're shown a yellow card by the referee, you shut up. Unless you're trying to do the John Calipari thing where you get teed up and somehow all of a sudden your team turns into the greatest team basketball's ever seen. He used to get under Rick Pitino's skin so bad doing that. And he baited him every time. Louisville would make a run. Cal would get teed up. Kentucky would go off on like a 20-2 run. Pitino would try to get teed up to replicate it, and it just wouldn't work. I don't know if that's what Mercer's coach was trying to do here or not, but I will, I guess, give him his props for he was dismissed and he disappeared. So good for him. But that got Memphis their first win of the season. Coach Mulrooney said, hey, the first one's always the hardest, and once you get that first one, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Makes sense to me. So then they go on the road. They've got a road trip at Evansville. Evansville's a team that came here and beat them pretty soundly last year, probably more convincing than the score would have dictated. So they go on the road, NCAA tournament team last year, and you're thinking, my my philosophy has become, and I'm sure it's not exactly apples to apples, but it's something that I know and I can fall back on. So this is where I'm at. You can see it down there on the bottom. And for years in World Cup qualifying, it didn't work out so great in 28 for the 2018 World Cup, and it almost didn't work out so great for the 2022 World Cup, and it doesn't have to play out this way for the 26 World Cup. But forever before that, from 1990, 98, 02, 06, 10, and 14 for the U.S., take care of business at home, get draws on the road, and you're going to the World Cup. So my thought process for the Memphis men's team is take care of business at home, get draws on the road, and you'll probably go to the NCAA tournament. Probably not an apples to apples comparison because, RPI and, there's only X number of teams. And, unlike the World Cup where an X number of teams from each confederation are guaranteed to go, that's not the case in college soccer. I don't even think the men's team is 60. The men's field is 64 teams. But you keep taking care of business at home and you keep getting draws on the road. I think in the long run, you're going to be okay. Especially considering that the two teams that you've gotten draws on the road against this year, Evansville and Lipscomb, both beat you last year, and at least one of those teams was an NCAA tournament team last year. Now, obviously don't want to drop that Belmont game at home, but you got the Mercer win at home, and then you've got a game coming up at home against Florida Gulf Coast, and then a game on the road at Jacksonville before you get into conference play. And then, of course, your final non-conference game is at North Carolina. That's one I don't think anybody's expecting a win or a draw in that one. It would be fantastic if you could get it, and that would be an incredible high point in the history of this program, especially considering that they knocked you out of the tournament 2 years ago. But if you can get a win against got the draw against Evansville, get a win against Florida Gulf Coast, hopefully get a win on the road against Jacksonville, just don't lose that, and then, take care of business like you did last year once you got into conference play. Remember, last year, bad non-conference, AAC regular season champs. You have a decent non-conference so far this year. If you are the AAC regular season champs again, I think you are in very good shape to be going to the NCAA tournament. I'd feel much better if you just went out and won the conference tournament, but that doesn't happen very often. So to make that the expectation, I think, is unrealistic. There's no reason that they can't. It's just that they haven't yet. But, if you win the AAC regular season tournament, that means, again, the conference tournament is right back here at South Campus. Get a win or two there, or you get 2 wins there, you're for sure going to the big dance. You get at least one, I think. All other things considered, you'll be in good shape. But the next game is at home against Florida Gulf Coast on Wednesday, which is why we're doing the show today. Now, that takes care of the men's team. Moving on to the women's team. They are still awesome. They are 5-0-0. Right now, at the time of recording, they are the number 15 team in the country. I think the rankings will be re-released tomorrow. So that's Tuesday the 2nd. And, when the schedule came out, you looked at it, you're like, if you can get through these games and be undefeated, you look at Tennessee's coming to town. And this has all sorts of extras around it, if you want to say. So far, Memphis is 3-0-0 against the SEC this year, which means they're also 3-0-0 against the power conferences this year. Unfortunately, the road game this past Sunday against Iowa State got canceled because of weather-related travel issues, meaning the Tigers could not get to Ames. That is eventually what the press release said from both the U of M and from Iowa State. The Tiger fans on Twitter had a lot of fun with that one. I can't say that I blame them, especially considering that the University of Memphis gave the Big 12 a essentially win-win, no lose, no drawback offer, and they didn't even vote on it. And it was, we will pay you to let us in. We will go without money, and then you can kick us out if you want. And they were like, nah, we're good. Which is incredibly dumb and short-sighted, especially for a conference that is absolutely desperate to get any kind of amount of money from any kind of place they can. And And then you have FedEx, AutoZone, International Paper, and Lowe's saying, take all of this money. And they're like, nah, sorry, guys, we're good. We're rich. We don't need any of this $250 million. So that, and then you combine it with Memphis going on the road to Iowa State, getting canceled. It's nobody's fault. Weather happens. Okay. I made the joke. I was like, Big 12 scared of Memphis, the only conclusion to draw here. Well, I sometimes underestimate the kind of reach that I have, I guess, because that caught on like wildfire. And it was actually really funny. But also if I'm Iowa State women's soccer and you're used to like 3 people liking your posts, and then all of a sudden you've got like 50 quote tweets from Memphis fans yelling at you for being scared, I might be a little irritated with that. But I thought it was funny. And, especially as it relates to the Big 12, I do think Memphis fans have a right to feel aggrieved. Because the on-field product when it comes to realignment, football is all that matters. If you're one of these people that thinks basketball matters when it comes to realignment, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. Basketball does not matter one iota. UCF and BYU did not get added to the Big 12 because of the basketball programs. If basketball mattered, Kansas would have been in the Big 10 15 years ago, and somebody would have scooped up UConn already. But also, never mind. So, like, the on-field product for the University of Memphis in football has been for 11 years now the best outside of the power conferences. Win-loss record, NFL draft talent, whatever metric you want to use, it's been among the best. And then here comes Memphis. Ed Scott's been on the job for 11 months, and he's put this dynamite blockbuster deal together, and the Big 12 says no. So, yeah, I think Memphis fans have every right to feel aggrieved by the Big 12, and I am amused that it has spilled over into women's soccer. And if this leads to more people, more Tiger fans who are previously unaware of what's been going on with the soccer programs at the University of Memphis, if this gets them to rally around the teams and start showing up at games and tweeting about the games and supporting the team, then I'm all for it. The biggest bummer about it, though, is you don't want to, just write off an opponent or assume. But consider that Memphis women's soccer has not lost a game to a Big 12 opponent since 2019. And I think that they'd won like 8 out of 9 and 7 in a row. And I think 3 or 4 of those last 7 were against Iowa State, both here and in Ames. So it'll get made up next year. But for this year, that's a bummer to lose a potential win against a power conference opponent, especially considering that you got screwed out of an NCAA tournament appearance last year. So, but the bright side of that is it absolutely guaranteed that you are going to have a perfect record going into the Tennessee game on Thursday. And there is no other way to build this, no other way to put it. And everybody else should get on the train. This is the game of the century. You have an undefeated top 15, maybe a little bit more by Thursday, Memphis team. You have undefeated number 2, perhaps number 1, Tennessee team, right? Tennessee has knocked off the reigning national champions and the most elite program in women's college soccer. They went on the road and beat the number 4 UCLA Bruins, who have also been one of the preeminent powers of women's college soccer. They put up, I think, a 10-piece in one of their games this year against a know-nothing team, but 10, it might have just been 9. It might have just been 9, but I think it was 10. That's a lot of goals, right? And as good as Memphis has been, they have not scored 10 goals in a game. But you also have the fact that this is a rematch of a game that got played last year. Tennessee was one of only 2 teams to beat Memphis last year. It was the only regular season game that Memphis lost last year. It was on the road in Knoxville. And Memphis went 13-2-4 and did not make the NCAA tournament. Tennessee went like 9-8-3 and made the NCAA tournament, which is crazy because Memphis is a good enough program to be a solid resume win for Tennessee, but is also not a good enough team to get into the NCAA tournament themselves. Makes no sense to me. But again, the burden of proof on athletic programs at the University of Memphis is much higher than it is for everybody else, which is crazy because if you think about it, they are doing more with less. And then you look at programs around elsewhere that do a lot less with a lot more. And they get the benefit of the doubt just because they have more. I would think that I would be more impressed with the program that is consistently achieving more with far fewer resources than the people who are given everything and accomplish nothing. Could also refer to the current players in the U.S. men's national team. But it's here, and if for nothing else, this brings us back. There's a Kenny Stubblefield and I did a podcast back in November about the perfect vehicle for getting the non-soccer person into watching soccer is college soccer. And we specifically used the University of Memphis because if you are somebody that grew up watching Penny Hardaway play at the Coliseum and, watching D'Angelo Murphy, goodness gracious, D'Angelo Williams play at the Liberty Bowl, the artist formerly known as the Liberty Bowl, you're probably a diehard Tiger fan. So if you're going to want to get into soccer, it stands to reason that you would get behind the programs at the University of Memphis because you are already a big University of Memphis fan, and the games are free. You don't have to pay to buy a ticket. You don't have to pay to park. But then you also have the factor, it's Memphis against Tennessee. We saw this to a little bit of a lesser extent with Memphis against Ole Miss. Brooks Monaghan said, hey, it's always nice to beat Ole Miss. If they beat Tennessee on Thursday, I guarantee you he'll say it's always nice to beat Tennessee. Because Memphis against Tennessee moves the needle whether you're a soccer fan or not. All right? It's a big deal. You're going to have, I don't know, a lot of Tennessee fans. You're going to have a noticeable amount of them, that's for sure. There were a good number of Missouri fans there on Thursday. But there's going to be some orange. There's going to be some orange there. There's going to be a lot more blue there. Right? And remember, the first time you're catching the show this year, stadium deconstruction has been completed. We are awaiting the beginning of stadium reconstruction. So right now, there are temporary bleachers. So your best bet is to either A, get there early if you want a seat in the temporary bleachers, or to bring your own chair or your own blanket. Coach Mulrooney and Coach Monaghan have both encouraged fans to do so. I'm just passing along that reminder. Bring a lawn chair so that you are not forced to just stand the whole game. Now, you might want to stand the whole game, but it's better to have your chair and not need it than to need it and not have it. But it's going to be, I was talking with somebody on staff there at the University of Memphis. They're expecting to have to put out 3 tables for media. That's never happened before. So this is going to be a big game. You also have one more little interesting tidbit is that Tim Howard's daughter plays at Tennessee. Tim Howard's daughter is on the roster at Tennessee. I don't know how much she plays. Tim Howard, of course, U.S. men's national team goalkeeper, former alleged sporting director at Memphis 901 FC. I can tell you in the 6 years that I covered that team, the number of times I saw him in the building, excluding the games that he played, 3 times in 6 and call it 5 seasons. The most visible he ever was when they brought in Bill Hamid, which ended up nuking the locker room. So I don't know if Tim Howard will be here on Thursday. But that's just another little layer. But game of the century. I'm rolling with it. You need to roll with it, and you need to be there. This is going to be an incredible game. It is going to be the toughest test Tigers have had thus far this year. And again, we keep saying this is a very, very, very young Tigers team, the youngest in the history of the program. But every single test that has been put before them, they have passed it. Now, Coach Monaghan will tell you, and I will agree with him, every game there's still stuff to work on and stuff to improve. To say that this team is a finished product after 5 games together would be foolish. But, they've played 2 non-power conference teams and beaten them resoundingly. Did not play with their food. They have played 3 SEC teams, and they have beaten all 3 of them. And they have found different ways to do it. 3-2 against Ole Miss, 1-0 against Vandy, and then 2-1 against Missouri. And I tell you what, that Missouri game, I was nervous about that one. While it was happening, I was nervous about it. Because Missouri, Missouri, and this may just be part of being a young team, but Missouri, I swear it feels like they won every aerial duel. And in the penalty, that's how they got their goal. And then in the penalty area in the second half, if any of those balls had been headed on frame or anywhere other than right at Abby Kudla, could have been trouble. But they weren't, and the ones that were, Abby Kudla was right there. What I really appreciate about women's goalkeepers at the college level and at the youth level, as opposed to men's, is when they go up to grab the ball, they just grab it. And that's something one of the somebody that coaches in DeSoto County, I believe used to be the men's coach at Northwest, drives him crazy. It drives me crazy, and I don't even coach. Basically, from the time they're 13, once you start getting to 11v11, and I've seen it all the way up through the college level, men's or boys goalkeepers, instead of getting the ball, they'll bat it down at their feet. I guess they think it looks cool. I don't know, but is it likely that somebody is going to score with their foot up here when you're no? Where's somebody going to score with their foot when the ball is on the ground? Can you get to the ball on the ground as easily as you can to the ball up here? No. So men's goalkeepers constantly knocking it down. I swear that's how half of the goals that Memphis gave up last year went in, is just batting it down instead of catching it and it going into the goal because, hey, here's the ball. It's at my foot. Goal. Abby Kudla is not about that life. She goes up and she grabs it and she holds it. That's very refreshing, and I think that's very important and a very big reason why very few goals have been scored against the Tigers this year. I think, 3? They've given up 3 goals this year. The flip side to that challenge is I don't think Tennessee's given up a goal yet. And they've played 5 games. Okay, let's see. North Carolina, 2-0. Eastern Kentucky, 9-0. Okay, so it was 9. It wasn't 10. UCLA, 1-0. Loyola Marymount, 3-0. Western Carolina, 3-0. That's 2, 11, 12, 15, 18. They've scored 18 goals and have given up 0. So if Memphis wants to beat Tennessee on Thursday, they're going to have to do something that hasn't happened yet this season, and that's score on Tennessee. And they'll also have to hold them scoreless. So it's going to be a tough challenge, but it's also one that if you win it, that is a huge, massive, massive, massive boost for the program and a huge resume win, a huge win on your resume for the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be very exciting. There's going to be a lot of people there. Again, outside of those 2 LSU NCAA tournament games in 21 and 23, I don't think we will have seen a crowd or an atmosphere for a game like we will for this one. It's going to be bananas. It's the game of the century. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. You can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. Over on Facebook, it's 901 Soccer. It's Bluff City Media. And on YouTube, please like the video. Please comment on the video. Please subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. And hopefully we will see you out there at South Campus on Thursday at 7 p.m.